Be advised, you are coming in weak and unreadable.
Say again, Com Tower. This is Haji. Do you read me over?
Pacho, this is Com Tower. I read you Lima Charlie.
Com Tower. Request permission to launch and commence the field op. Over.
Stand by. Pacho, permission granted. Say again, permission granted.
Roger that. Launching podcast in 3, 2. You are now entering the field op with your host, Pacho Correa, Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Marine Corps retired. Get some. Hurrah!
Get some. Hurrah! What's going on, everybody? Baby Friday is upon us. Friday night's Eve. You know what it is. Goddamn, thank God it's almost a weekend. We got a really amazing show for you, just like we do every week. However, this one I think is very special, near and dear to my heart. But before we bring on, this really awesome and amazing guest, let's talk a little bit about, basically all the pleasantries out of the way. Hey, this show is brought to you by the folks at Primerica. So, when was the last time that you had basically analyzed how your money's coming in, it's going out? Do you know what your financial independence number is? That's basically the number that you need for how much income you need when you retire to survive. Basically, is it how much monthly income do you need? We're not counting Social Security or any of that stuff. Just retirement. So you want to have a vehicle that's going to get that money to be basically working for you. So that way you don't find yourself like the majority of most of our senior Americans nowadays going back to work. So it's all on the show description right there. Follow the link bio. Get some really good information. No pressure, no commitment, no bullshit. Just some really good information. At the end of the day, you'll be a much better informed individual as it pertains to your financial status and what it takes for you to be financially independent. Thank you all also to Angel Figueroa for the nice shout out. Thank you. I've been working out and maybe losing a little bit of weight. We'll see. But also this show is also brought to you by the VA. So here's an awesome message from Mike Richmond.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you serve in the military? If so, you can obtain a free lifetime pass to more than 2,000 federal recreation sites. These sites are located across more than 400 million acres of public lands, including national parks, wildlife refuges, and forests. The lands host activities to fit any lifestyle: hiking, biking, fishing, camping, and much more. Gold Star families are also eligible for these free lifetime passes. Plus, they cover entrance fees for a driver and all passengers in a car, or up to 3 additional adults at sites that charge per person. Obtaining one is easy. Just go to the National Park Service website, nps.gov, or the National Park Service app.
Yeah, I highly recommend that you get that park pass. It is kind of like a golden ticket. As a matter of fact, happy belated Father's Day to all you bad motherfuckers out there, because I know that we're really underestimated. And you must have gotten a nice pair of socks or a tie, but nonetheless, hey, happy belated. I went to a park down the street. As a matter of fact, I wanted to go kayaking and just presented my card there, and the lady's like, "Hey, thank you for your service. Go right in." So it's really cool, and you get, depending on the state, you get some really cool benefits: free fishing, free hunting, licenses, blah blah blah, all that cool stuff. So take advantage of that and check it out. So. All right, I think that's all the pleasantries. Hey, last but not least, this show is brought to you by the Great American Constitution and all the freedoms that this amazing document brings to us, and as a birthright to being Americans, and those of you who are naturalized citizens. So this show is all about freedom of speech. We're also about the right to bear arms and all the amazing other things that this, not only this document, but this great nation of ours have given us. So if you're all about that or not, it's okay, but just if you want to stick around, like, subscribe, and follow. Make sure you spread the word because we provide some really good information. And if not, then perhaps check something out from the folks at CHradio.com, because without them, this show wouldn't be here today. So shout out to Brian and the rest of the crew, punching all the little buttons and making the lights go blink and beep and all that good stuff. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. This next guest, he's up there just like with Mad Max and all the other awesome guests that we've had over here on our show. I had the distinct pleasure and honor of working with this amazing individual. He's an outstanding leader. This man not only leads from he leads from the front, never from the rear. I mean, he is a man, as Austin Power once said, he's a man, baby. So let's bring Mr. Craig Kozeniesky to the show.
Oh boy, yeah, what an intro. Hey, Pacho, thanks for having me, man.
How are you, man?
Doing good. I had a little nervous tick going there when I heard your intro about the fire watch. I haven't heard that in about 30 plus years. So yeah, time to pay attention.
You know, it's funny. Before we get into the whole show, Brian and I, we he's the one who put all that together, and every time he plays that, I get like a chill down my. That is, remember Dumb and Dumber? What's the most annoying sound in the world? But for us Marines, it's at 5 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning or whatever. It's somebody, hey man, you got fire watch. So, but every time I hear that on the intro, I always start giggling like a little girl because it's hilarious, you know.
Perfect. Yeah, good. Hey, thanks for having me. I've been following this for a while. You and I have been trying to do this. I'm very grateful. We've stayed closely connected since we served together. 12, 13 years ago, right?
Oh man, yeah, it's it's been a minute. As a matter of fact, why don't we start out? Tell us a little, about your career. When you started, like, the whole jarhead. Hey, what units have you been with? Blah blah blah. Just in a quick overbrief, bro.
Sure. So I grew up essentially in New Mexico. I moved back and forth between Texas and New Mexico throughout my childhood. I am the son of two enlisted Marines. My father was from Brooklyn. My mother is from rural Oklahoma. They met in the Marine Corps in Camp Lejeune, were married, moved to Kansas City, where he was on I&I duty, and I was born. And then he was sent to Vietnam. And at that time, they discharged women Marines when they became pregnant. So she was discharged. She went home to New Mexico to live with her family, her folks in southern New Mexico when my father was in Vietnam. So he was wounded in action. After about 9 months, he was with Echo 29 in the north part of South Vietnam. And then we essentially settled in South New Mexico. He, as a double amputee in those days in the 60s, put himself, after a year in the hospital in Philadelphia and in New York, recovering, put himself through college, and then in accounting, became a CPA and became, a very successful businessman. And, we moved up to Albuquerque and lived up there most of my upbringing. So, in my mid-teens, I guess I obviously started. I had the Marine Corps influence in my life since day one. I think probably the Eagle Globe and Anchor is one of the first things that I recognized seeing, and a lot of his war memorabilia on the walls, of course. And so, I think I was destined for that. When I was 14 years old, I enrolled I was kind of forced to, and it's a good thing that I did go to the New Mexico Military Institute for high school. And so I went down there. So I started my time in uniform really then when I was about 14. I had been in the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, went on to, work through my time there and made my Eagle Scout, and then went over to the military school, played football there. And I think one of the seminal moments that I can probably remember, which kind of goes back to my origins, was when the Beirut barracks were bombed, the Marines barracks were bombed in 1982. I think that really kind of flipped a switch in me in terms of wanting to serve in the Marines. And so that's what kind of, started that fire.
Yeah, it's for a lot of people, it's culminating points in that, Beirut, Lebanon, obviously moving time forward during the whole, when George Sr. was in office, obviously in the 90s, a lot of people joined around that time. Moving time forward, 9/11. I think that's, the military as a whole go through these spikes and these time periods that are kind of embedded in our heads. and makes you want to be a part of something greater than what than yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and again, that's a great point too. Another influence too was during the Reagan years. I could vividly remember that.
Yeah.
While I was in high school, and then even beyond that, when I started college, I was going to enlist in the Marines,
right?
But my father, had paid for my education there at the New Mexico Military Institute, and then I had to earn some grants to go to junior college there through the Alumni Association and whatnot. So he said, "Why don't you give it a try, see what you think?" So I did. I went to my freshman year there. I got involved in the leadership of the Corps of Cadets. I was a cadet first sergeant, and I said, I kind of like this stuff. Kind of like the regimented aspect of being in the military. I liked leadership, and then I was really enjoyed the school at that time. I met my wife there. She came in, Helene. She came in as a Falcon Scholar. She's a much more smart, talented than I am, and had an appointment to the Air Force Academy and went there as one of those heritage schools, as a prep school.
Right.
So that's where we met, and we've been together ever since. And we were married in '88. We finished New Mexico Military Institute. I was a squadron commander. I was one of the highest ranking guys in the Corps of Cadets when I left there, and I was one of the few guys that was not Army, because it was an Army school. I'm still good friends today with many folks that are current Marine Corps or retired Marine Corps officers that we went to New Mexico Military Institute together, including some that went the Army route to make their way in. But I'd held tried and true, and I joined the platoon leaders class, the PLC program, and I went to my first OCS in '86, and then I transferred. Yeah. So I finished up. I like to joke, University of Nothing Much in Albuquerque. UNM was a great experience. My wife and I both finished there. She went on a naval scholarship. We went naval ROTC. I wound up getting a naval ROTC scholarship with a semester left in school, and so I got a regular commission. And in those days, in the late '80s, it was tough to get a regular commission. You either got it through the Service Academy or you had to have a naval ROTC scholarship. And I managed to do that at the urging of a mentor and a recruiter. And that pretty much changed the trajectory. I mean, it gave you a little bit more certainty as you started off your path in the Marine Corps.
That's amazing. So you almost kind of follow your parents' footsteps to some degree. They met, while they were in the service. You guys met at a military-related type of environment, and you guys almost brought your entire home and as a whole, both being. Sure. Man,
my father's first tour of duty was in Bravo Company 3rd Recon Battalion. At that time, that was in Hawaii. It was in early '60s, and this was before he went to Vietnam, and it was in Kaneohe Bay there in Hawaii. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to be a recon Marine. There was a recon Marine I&I site, a reserve site up in Albuquerque, and I started to get to know some of those guys, and I'm still in touch with many of those guys as well. There's a guy there that was the I&I there. He retired as Lieutenant Colonel Wild Bill Cook. He's a legend, and he was probably the first recon officer that I had seen. So I had my taste of that. We went with the military, and I was an officer at the New Mexico Military Institute, and then so that's where I thought, okay, I want to try this officer route in the U.S. Marine Corps, and then further challenge and influence that way. So did an extra semester of college, graduated in '88, and then went to the basic school and infantry school in '89. First tour of duty was in 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I wanted to go to Lejeune because everything that I had read leading up to that point of everybody going to, because it was the interwar years, right? There was no thought of anything going on in Iraq, Kuwait, or anything at that point, and I wanted to go where the action was. So Marines from Camp Lejeune were going to Grenada, and they were going to Beirut, Lebanon, and they were going out on the expeditionary unit deployment at that time. So that's where I wound up, and went straight to 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, and our 1st Battalion commander was a guy then named Lieutenant Colonel Jim Conway. He went on to become the commandant. So talk about an example to have, early on in the career. And of course, in those days too, the Marine Corps had, different methods of employment. And 2nd Marine Regiment was known as the Cold Weather Regiment. And the very first deployment that I did in early 1990 was to Bridgeport, California, and they had the worst winter storm in 50 years, and we got our taste of what we were signed up for. So we focused on cold weather and mountain operations in 2nd Marine Regiment, and that kind of also really shaped a lot of my path throughout the Corps as well.
No, and I just want to tell all the listeners that, by the way, Craig never forgot that cold weather training, because him, and we'll get to that too. In Fuji, he brought all that good stuff with him, and we hiked all them freaking mountains in the snow and all crazy shit. Dude, you've had an amazing career, and I guess for brevity's sake, I mean, time moved forward. How did you are on an honorary Royal British Marine?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
You know, that it goes back to 2nd Marine Regiment. We had the U.S. Marine Corps and the Royal Marine Commandos from the U.K. have always had a healthy exchange program since the early 60s, where we would exchange staff non-commissioned officers and also company grade officers, both ground pilots and also mountain leaders and reconnaissance men and communicators, etc. There was a Royal Marine captain named Buster Howes who went on to become the Commandant General of the Royal Marines.
Wow.
And he was at 2nd Marine Regiment, so I got to meet him, got to know him a little bit. We had to after we deployed on 4th Med to Desert Storm, so we were on the ships and back, and then after that went directly into a desert training phase, and then into cold weather, and went over to Norway for the first time in 1992. And Buster gave us a primer as to what to expect. And that's where I caught the bug. My battalion XO at the time was a guy named Major Rod Richardson, and he became one of the formative mentors in my life. He was an enlisted man in Vietnam. He was a recon officer as well in 1st Recon Battalion in the 80s, and then was also what we called a cold weather ninja. So he was a mountain extraordinaire. Did the Royal Marine Exchange program. So that kind of set me on my path. I did that as a mid-grade captain. I went from the Grunts to Recon Battalion in Okinawa. I did 3 years in Okinawa on the Grunts. I'm sorry, the 3rd Recon Battalion. Funny enough, here's another crazy story you probably didn't know, but I checked into the very platoon 30 years later that my father was in.
Oh, wow.
At Bravo in 2nd Platoon Bravo Company, 3rd Recon Battalion. So I did that and it was, just fabulous. Learned a lot there with recon. A lot of time in the water, a lot of time in the jungle, a lot of time patrolling, a lot of time really understanding what the folks that were training us were all Vietnam vets or guys that had served in Vietnam, and that's what our doctrine was. So all through the early 90s, and then even so after the Desert Storm experience, it was back to the grind, living in the field a lot and practicing your trade. Went to Amphibious Warfare School. Was also influenced by the director of the Amphibious Warfare School at the time, a guy named T.S. Jones, Colonel, retired as a Major General, also a Royal Marine Exchange guy. So I had tons of influence, that pushed me down that path. And so I went over there 1996 to 98 with my, my family. My boys were pretty young at the time. In fact, my young son was a toddler at the time, and he went straight from school over there. We were in those days as well. They assigned the Yank, based on the unit rotations, based on where the Royal Marines were and going back and forth to Northern Ireland, because the IRA threat was still pretty prevalent at that time. So we were sent up to what is known as 4-5 Commando up in Scotland. And that was an outstanding experience. Not only was it great, obviously, Scotland, England, and Ireland are quite a bit different. A lot of people don't really realize that. We went there the year that Braveheart was released. We were safe we were safe as kittens in Scotland. We learned a lot. We lived the experience there, saw the castles, and did everything. My oldest son he was the equivalent of kindergarten, first grade there, primary 1 and 2, and started playing football or soccer there, and became a great soccer player throughout his high school years. So that was a very, very formative period. But the thing that changed during that time was I went to the Royal Marine Commando course, and the Commando course itself is, all Royal Marines are commandos since World War II. The Commando course itself, and I may be, getting this wrong after 30 some years, but the relatively same core curriculum for a 6-week period, plus the Commando tests, all the graded events, all the standards, all those things have remained relatively the same since World War II, believe it or not.
Wow.
The young officers do a 14-month course, and in month 6 or 7, they do the Commando course. They get their green beret and they become commandos. The enlisted Marines, Royal Marines, are about 6 months is their whole basic training, and they do their Commando course towards the end. For all the external folks that come in, they had artillery from the Royal Army, Royal Engineers were there. They had naval corpsman equivalents as well. It's much like our Marine Corps. They would come in and do what they would call the All Arms Commando course. So, and then all the foreigners would come in and do that as well. So that's what I did. That was a 10-week beat down. It was obviously a life-changing experience, for me. It came out. I did it as 30 years old too, and I thought, I was kind of an old man, and I was, and at that time. So comparatively, so it was great. You earn your green lid, what they called it, right up front, and it really sets the tone for the whole of your tour. And I don't know how it is these days. I think it is probably similar. But the Royal Marines, who I hold in great affection and high regard,
yes, I know you do.
really want to. I mean, they're a great force, but they're very small. Okay, and there's the capability between the Royal Marines and the U.S. Marines from a combat formation perspective are vastly different. But from an individual perspective, if you can show that you can become a commando, then that really sets the tone for your tour. So I was very fortunate there. I got beat up quite a bit. I had a few injuries out of that, and learned a lot. And it was just a wonderful experience. But I was coming up on my 10-year mark in the Corps, and that's when the Corps went through a shift of making majors earlier. So I was hoping to leave there, go back to the grunts, and to put into and be a company commander. I was a company 2IC, a second in command there with the Royal Marines. And at first I was with X-Ray Company. So, and this goes back to a lot of history we can't cover here, but it had X-Ray, Yankee Company, and Zulu Company. I said, guys, why can't I go to Yankee Company? What's the problem? I don't understand. I'm a Yank. It just makes too much sense. So I was an X-Ray Company for a year. And then I was fortunate enough to become the support company commander my last year there. And that support company equivalency in those days to now is weapons company, mortars, machine guns, anti-tank, and recce troop and engineer troop. So it was, and a lot of time in the Arctic, which was probably some of the hardest things that I've done in my life, is a Royal Marines deployment up in the Arctic for 3 months. In the jungle in Brunei, in the island of Borneo.
Oh shit! I didn't know that. Damn.
Yeah. So they have a fantastic jungle training center there.
Yes, yeah.
Forces do a rotation through there in their selection course, and then we were in Southern Africa. We did a med float where we linked up with a USMC Marine Expeditionary Unit. It was a wonderful time. So I got selected for major, and I went back. Excuse me. I was going back to the. I want to go back to the fleet. Went to First Force Recon Company from there. Which was great. I mean, obviously, in those days, Force Recon Marines, had achieved the pinnacle of their profession. It was in that sweet spot between special operations and from when it was formed in '87 until the 9/11 timeframe. And so, the highest caliber of men that I've worked with. And so that I met another one of my formative mentors, a guy named Bob Coates, retired colonel. And that was great. So we, again, preparing, for deep reconnaissance missions that they would have, that we, our MEF Marines would have to do it either in a Korean scenario or in the desert, but also for precision shooting and the CQB mission for the Marine Expeditionary Units. So I'll pause there.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, there's certain people that make an impact in your life, and I mean, you and I have known each other for now quite I'll say quite some time.
Yep.
One, I brag, I brag of being fortunate enough to have served under your leadership. I also tell everybody too. I'm like, hey, by the way, this is the guy that broke my other knee again. But I say that jokingly. But it's certain people is that again, as the show says, lead from the front, not from the rear. And I mean, when I got pinged, it's I guess moving time a little bit forward. And, here I find myself checking into Fuji and what was his name? Ken with the Moto T guy. We're doing the turnover,
Right.
and he basically tells me like, hey, dude. The CGI came in here and cleaned house. There was some bad stuff going on in the past. We got a new leadership, and all I can tell you is that hey, this guy is the real deal. So, but he said he's a good dude. He's just, he's fair, and he's making a lot of good changes in Fuji. And I was like, okay, hey, let's make this happen. And so that was my first introduction to the whole Fuji thing, and that was kind of weird. How did it feel for you, just right quick, going from all that, man, hey, this is what I thought the Marine Corps was going to be. You went from that lifestyle, and now you find yourself, taking over command, which is it's still a great thing, but maybe a little bit on the slower side, more logistics heavy base. How did that feel for you?
That was, and again, I was, I try to say I'm a hardworking blue collar professional, and I got a good sense of humility from my upbringing, and then paying attention to the leaders and mentors that influenced me as well. So at first I was kind of pissed off. I was like, wait a minute, I just came back from a year in Norway. I went to Norway for defense college. And this was after the Iraq tour with my infantry battalion, and within 3 weeks of coming back to the States, I get 1 year unaccompanied tour to go command Camp Fuji, which is typically an artillery officer's job.
Right.
And Bridgeport, the Mountain Warfare Training Center, was on the slate, and I didn't, and I thought I was a shoo-in for that because I had done a tour there, the Royal Marines, all the cold weather mountain stuff.
Right.
So I thought, once I got my ego under control and thought, this is a great privilege to be selected to command and also to lead Marines, no matter what you do. I had a word with then 3-star Lieutenant General Joe Dunford, who obviously went on.
Dunford, yeah.
He's probably one of the most important general officers in our lifetime. Basically, he said, "Look, get it under control. Okay, you may have done all these things and think you're great, but this is what the Marine Corps wants you to do. You either step up and do it, or you don't do it. And if you don't do it, then you're done. You're gone." He basically gave me the old knife and he said, "You're done." And, so I look back and I called him on it. He says the last 5 guys refused Camp Fuji, and so we'd have to pull an alternate. So talked it over with the wife. I'd just been deployed a lot, and we thought, okay, we'll do this. It kept us and it kept our family and unaccompanied in Northern Virginia for an extra year, and that turned out to be pretty significant because it allowed some stability there. Our youngest son to go through a single high school. His older brother had to go through a couple of different high schools, and I was able to go over there and do that. And once I got there and realized, I learned a lot about facilities, about logistics, about maintenance, running a budget, really about engaging with the local authorities, because we're the United States. We're very important to the host nation. We're surrounded by 5 Japanese garrisons. We're 80 miles away from Tokyo, and I was the senior American officer in the South Kanto Plain. So it was easy to embrace, the challenge there. It was hard to overlook. The funny thing is, and I got to find humor in a lot of things, but the Marine Corps sends you a letter when you get selected for command, and it's typical letter off the printer, and says, "Congratulations on you being selected for command of Camp Fiji." It's Camp Fiji. He said, "That's in the South Pacific." The Marine Corps doesn't even know where I'm going. Okay. So I got that for posterity, and that's wonderful. But when I got over there, it was wonderful, and it was it was an extraordinary time. It was a pullout. It was 2010, 2010 and 11. I just got promoted to colonel 9 days before I arrived, Pacho. I don't even know if you knew that.
Shit. No, goddamn.
I was a baby colonel, right? So, I didn't think I was the old man, but everybody thinks the colonel's the old man. I'm an old man now, but I get over there and really realize that this is an extraordinary place. Number one, it's right at the base of Mount Fuji.
Yeah.
12,842 feet or whatever it is. And just the culture is rich. It's traditional. It's wonderful. Japan,
really cool. Yeah.
And then I had about 105 Marines, about 115 Japanese and U.S. civilians working there. The job was unaccompanied for all of us, as you know.
Yeah.
Later they've changed that, which is good, but it wasn't good for us because it would have been a great family experience over there. But the drawdown in Iraq was going on, and then the surge in Afghanistan was happening. So we were getting literally no business there, right? If you remember, we would get a few artillery units come in there. We'd have the engineers come up from Iwakuni and do some training. And for the audience, Camp Fuji really it's been in existence since 1947 after World War II, and it's close to Fuji schools, which is the largest Japanese self-defense force schools there. And there's a lot of pre-positioned equipment there, from trucks to heavy equipment to artillery to heavy weapons. And the Marines from Okinawa and other places come there, draw the equipment out. They move dirt. They move a lot of volcanic ash. They blow the hell out of the mountain with live fire, and then they put it away and go back to home station. So as Pacho said, we were needing. I wanted. I also, it was a revelation I made that all the Marines there, the youngsters, were mainly junior Marines. They were going to go from there to combat units to go to Afghanistan. So we started a combat skills enhancement program, and we brought up cold weather equipment from Okinawa. Yeah. We started doing hikes. We started doing infantry training. We started doing convoy operations. We did cold weather survival training. So essentially learning how to live and operate in a snow-covered environment. And so that kept everybody, busy. And then, of course, as you remember, we had a pretty seminal event occur while we were there.
Yeah, and I think this will be the last part that we'll touch on the show. It was a great opportunity. I'm not gonna lie, I went kicking and somewhat kicking and screaming. Right. I was part of the Exceptional Family Member Program. My son Joseph, my son, my daughter, and my wife at the time were all in that program, and only Balboa or San Diego could service them. So they're like, hey, we're gonna send you here, and somebody told me, like, dude, I think you're being set up in a good way. Go in there and check it out. And you know what? It was like you said, you brought all this new training and keeping us all engaged. It gave me the opportunity to get my, become a company commander. Under your tutelage, and it also gave me on my trade as a Motor T officer to work with Okinawa and modernize a lot of the stuff that we brought in and MRAP into the mix. We modernized the tool room and just some really cool training. But and we'll talk about it now. I guess this is our elephant in the room. I'm sitting there in one meeting, and remember that red oak table that we had? It took 10 of us to move that friggin' thing, and the table starts swaying back. I love telling the story, and the table is swaying, and I look at the big dude from Perso, and I was like, "Hey man, are you shaking the table?" He's like, "No, dude, I'm not doing that." So then I look at Bree, the S4 officer, and I was like, "Hey, are you shaking the table?" She's like, "No." Columbia's has a lot of seismic activity, and it just something went in. And I just looked at Ken Tarr, your S3 officer, and I was like, "Hey man, this is an earthquake. I am out." And I ran down them stairs, and next thing I know, I look behind, and you're right behind me, and you're like, "Get to the fucking basketball courts." And I swear to God, and maybe it's just my imagination, but I remember I can literally feel the sidewalk somewhat do this.
Absolutely.
And then, we get over there and the sirens go off, but just the sound, no movie, and maybe it's my imagination, but just no sound in TV can duplicate.
Right.
And I mean, it was scary. I mean, I was scared shitless. I don't know about you,
It was incredibly unnerving. We had many shakes before that. So I thought I'd sit there in my office. I was meeting with somebody and just wait for it to end.
Because we were getting ready to call attention on deck for you for the meeting.
That's why we have a meeting. So we were waiting for that, and I said, "This isn't stopping." Everybody outside, and it kept on going. And I said, "This is alarming." so we got accountability.
Yeah.
You heard, sirens and alarms going off everywhere. We had 2 emergency generators that went on at the airfield and also at, in our headquarters. I remember we all went upstairs to my office as soon as the electricity came back on. This is 20 minutes or so, 25 into it. Turn on the local news, and we had, the local,
right there in the room. Yes.
And we watched the tsunami happen live.
Right. Oh, look, I'm getting fucking goosebumps, man.
Yeah. So I knew, and Ken Kintar, you mentioned Ken, Captain Kintar, then Captain Kintar, had also done some humanitarian assistance as I had in a previous deployment as well. And we knew within 30 minutes that, we could be in a position, to do something. So my whole mantra was, get organized, because I knew we had equipment, we had Marines, and we had the ability and access to help get approved and then get forward. I had no idea that it would take several days to go through all of that, and then eventually, we were tasked to conduct relief operations up in the Sendai region and also maintain our base as an intermediate support base, because really all of that happened. It was terrible. It was almost 20,000 people died, horrendous amounts of destruction. But then it was the Fukushima nuclear disaster
meltdown.
Well, so that was always there. That we were waiting on that to go worse and worse. So it was high adventure for a long time. But and we went up there. It was and provided a convoy for equipment. We delivered supplies. We helped do some recovery. It was a wonderful experience, terrible but wonderful experience to help the Japanese people and their defense force, and really just kind of put to use what we had been training, because we had all this cold weather equipment. It was really in the winter up there.
You took all that stuff with you.
The Marines responded, and that was some of the best training experience that I could ever hope for. It was a lot. For me, I thought I'm either going to get decorated or relieved, and I didn't really care, because we're right here in the middle of this, and we have to do something. And I'm not going to sit here while we have the ability to do that. So a lot of people, our boss, Blake, General Blake Corral was Deputy Forces Japan Commander. He was instrumental in getting us approved. Our boss in Okinawa, Major General Taliri, was a great guy. He made sure we were prepared and we could, support our mission, both home station too. And there's another gentleman, Brigadier General Craig Timberlake, great guy, great Marine, was the Med Commander down in Okinawa. So basically, on the fly, we formed a MAGTAF, a relief MAGTAF, Marine Air Ground Task Force, with our elements. Camp Fuji, Task Force Fuji is a ground combat element.
Yeah, I remember that.
The Combat Logistics Regiment under Jim Rubino. We had and of course, the air wing that came up there that were flowing in and out around the Fukushima area. That was an extraordinary time. So it made it really made that 1 year experience. Thinking back to that whole thing with General Dunford.
Yeah,
I'm too good. I'm too high speed. I'm too tough for this job. And that's why I was meant to go there.
Yeah, dude.
And then everybody else. That's why we were all meant to go there, so we could figure that wicked problem together.
I remember, after we ran back inside and the pin drop. Look, I get goosebumps. It's just every time I tell the story, you could hear the pin drop, and all I remember, you were standing. Wow, man, I get a little emotional. You were standing in between the door, to the room, kind of leaning on the door, and you were very quiet. Everybody was, and then all you said is, "Get me there now." And you turn around and you went into your office, and it's boom. We all like, okay, blah blah. Along the way, Ken and I almost went at it. By the way, I don't know if you heard about him and I, but nonetheless, I mean, but everything just clicked in, and we made that happen. And in I think it was a day and a half, 2 days. I mean, you were already sticks all formed up, ready to go. Tony and I saved. Tony became the CO.
Yeah.
I became the XO. I had just had knee surgery, and I wanted to go too, but I was broken. I mean, there was no way. Because even when the guys came like, "Oh, sir, there was no way with your broke ass knee,
that's
you would
right.
have done any good over there for us."
Yeah, but we had business to do back at Camp Fuji. We had we had to flow supplies through there. We had to house people that were
and we pushed engines and all kinds of crazy stuff to you guys. I mean, it was overall, it was the experience and just how this little command just did so much, and we strengthened because, obviously because of what we did under your leadership. I mean, it strengthened our bond with the Takigahara and with the Japanese forces. I mean, that much more, man.
Yeah. And they were so good to us. I mean, I really hold them in high regard. I mean, I love their culture. They were very respectful. They were always supportive of us and always showed us support. And I thought, I'll be damned if we're going to sit here, while they're suffering and we have the ability to do something. Let's figure it out. Let's work the problem, figure it out, get approved, and do it. And I'd say within 48 hours, we had our concept of operations up at the Joint Staff through one way or the other. And, the rest is history, as they say. So.
Yeah, man, it's been an amazing, just going. We can talk about so much shit, so much cool stuff that we did. I think that 1 year is I'm very thankful for my Marine Corps career, but just that year was very special because just the bunch of cool stuff that that happened, and just the camaraderie that because we were so small, how we bonded, just the officer and the staff corps, and even with the junior Marines. I mean, we were a tight. If there was a bar fight that that happened between Camp Fuji and whatever shit went down outside of those walls, I think that little group we could have just pretty much ran that entire place, So,
yeah, the Marines there impressed me. They stepped up. They were you find a way to motivate them, to give them purpose. I think the Afghanistan, knowing that the majority of them are going to go to a combat unit going to Afghanistan, was a big incentive, for them to really kind of latch onto the training and learn that. And it just happened to be exactly what we needed at that time. So I feel like I've done I've been very, very fortunate to do a lot of really great, wonderful things in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps has always been good to me, so I'll always be grateful for all the opportunities that the Marine Corps has provided me, probably more than I deserved. But all of those things helped prepare me to marshal up the team, the force, and what we did together. I couldn't have done it alone. I needed experts, I needed professionals, and I needed people that could operate, and that's the team that we all built collectively. So I'm just very grateful.
Craig, thanks so much. One, from the bottom of my heart, for always, for one, being a great leader and a mentor, a friend, a lifetime friend, thus far. It's been an honor and a pleasure really having you on the show, and we're definitely going to bring you back because, like I said, you really got a really cool career that we want to highlight. And at the end of the day, man, it's good shooting the shit with you once again.
Brother, yeah, I'm glad we reconnected again. I've always held you in high regard as not only a competent professional in your field, but I mean, they don't come any better as far as positivity, leading from the front, and then making the Marines motivated to do their job than you. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Thanks so much for your say hello to your family for me. Stick around, and we'll talk a little bit after the show, brother.
Sounds good, man. Okay, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. There's such, I feel honored to have been brought up and mentored by, guys like, Craig Kozeniesky, Mad Max, Scott Gilman, GMA Avalotis, all these people that just, they make a mark on you. And that when you always, even the shitty times, that when you tally up, I guess that little dash in between your birthday and I'm not dead yet. I'm just saying that little dash, people like that and folks like that make an impact on you, really make that dash count, and the experiences that came along with it. So, we'll definitely bring Craig back, and obviously, tell some of those no shit, there I was type of stories. So, hey, before I get off the air, I just want to say, one, again, happy Father's Day to you all, awesome dads out there, for doing the do and busting ass, and putting others before yourselves. So, but if you're one of those, and anybody in the show, or you have a friend who's been struggling, Like one, a buddy of mine yesterday, I was talking to, he's getting out of the Marine Corps. He's struggling. By the way, you're in my thoughts and prayers, brother. I'll check up on you right after the show. You know who you are. Give somebody a call, reach out. I'll listen to, if you want to cry and just blow some steam, talk shit about, the family, that's okay. It's okay. We all go through that, but don't carry that burden by yourself, and don't let that burden be so big that you just want to punch out and not be here with us anymore. Because at the end of the day, if ice bucket challenges and all these other things are great in name of suicide prevention, it's not going to bring you back at the end of the day. So your life matters, you matter. So reach out to a friend, do a buddy check this weekend, and if you're struggling, check out, give me a call. Military One Source, TRICARE. I mean, there's so much fucking resources out there that it's not worth you punching out and not being here. So you matter. So with that being said, folks, I think this is a good place to index. Shout out again, index. Woo, man, I love hearing that shit. So, but with that being said, everybody, hoorah, get some ice tamas, daisuki. See you next week. Come back. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.